ACSportstips.com, continuing with our Week 3 game analysis of the Alabama Crimson Tide traveling to Arkansas to take on the Razorbacks and head coach John L. Smith. At the start of the season, everybody had this game marked the second week in September. How would the Crimson Tide and A.J. McCarron fare as they traveled on the road to face the Razorbacks? That was before the Bobby Petrino mess. That was before the meltdown in Little Rock last week by the Razorbacks, where they were winning the ball game 28-7 and lost 34-31 to Louisiana Monroe in overtime. Starting quarterback for the Razorbacks, Tyler Wilson, was knocked out early in that first half. They were winning 28-7 and they lost 34-31 in a terrible meltdown. All eyes are on head coach John L. Smith. So we'll break down both sides of the ball for both teams, Alabama and Arkansas. We're going to hold back a prediction. We might have a prediction a little bit later of this game in the week just due to Tyler Wilson's injury. We don't know if he will even see action, but we'll talk about both teams and we'll break it down for you right now. Let's start with the Alabama Crimson Tide. What can you say? They're 2-0. They're ranked number 1. They dismantled Michigan. They just steamrolled Western Kentucky. A.J. McCarron looks like an elite quarterback now. He had a great game last week, 14 of 19 for 4 touchdowns. He has the Alabama Crimson Tide fans thinking of Jay Barker. All he does is win, baby, and that's what A.J. McCarron does. He does not turn the ball over. He plays within the system, and that's a positive and a strength for this team, especially if you're Nick Saban, who loves to run the football and loves to play ball control offense and then take his shots when the defense weakens. That's Nick Saban's trend and trademark, and we're going to break it down for you right now. A.J. McCarron, he's a junior quarterback. He won the BCS title. We did have some questions about his play coming into the season. He's erased them. He's shown that he has matured in the passing game, and offensive coordinator Doug Nussmeier has taken major steps with McCarron's development to date. How is he going to fare in this game? I think he's going to fare very well just for the fact of, you look at the Razorback defense last week, they gave up 550 total yards to Louisiana Monroe, and quarterback Browning last week, he tore them apart throwing for over 400 yards. He's a good quarterback. McCarron is a step above, and we look for A.J. McCarron to have a big game this weekend at Little Rock. The running game is without running back Fowler. He's out for the year. He hurt his knee. He'll be out for the year for the Crimson Tide. They're going to have to rely on T.J. Yelton and Eddie Lacy to fill in, and look for D. Hart as well. That strong running game by the Crimson Tide, led with that veteran offensive line, should have no problem against the defensive front in Arkansas that gave up a ton of yards last week. Was Arkansas looking ahead to this game last week? Maybe they were, but like we said in the post-game Week 2 comments, you cannot lose that type of game at home in the SEC if you're head coach John L. Smith. With or without Tyler Wilson, you need to rely on your running game and Niall Davis to gut that performance out. And defensively, you need to step up and make plays. And for the Razorbacks, unfortunately, they did not. So that hurts them. How is their psyche going into this game? Going into this game, their fans, with or without Petrino, had this game marked. They felt they legitimately had a chance in this ball game. They're going to need a Herculean effort to pull out the upset this weekend, because last week's letdown against Louisiana Monroe is going to hurt this team, and how they react going into this practice week is going to be a major cause of concern if you're a Razorback fan. Defensively for the Crimson Tide, what can you say? defensive coordinator Kirby Smart is one of the best defensive coordinators in the game. His teams are prepared week in and week out, and it all starts at the top with Nick Saban. The man is a genius. The man is a mastermind. Nobody will outwork or out-game plan Nick Saban. His teams are prepared week in and week out, and honestly, he might have been a little vanilla in the victory last week against Western Kentucky. They had a very bland running attack. The leading rusher did not rush over 36 yards. So it was all A.J. McCarron in the passing game last week against Western Kentucky, and they steamrolled to a 35-0 victory, the Crimson Tide did. So for the Crimson Tide this week, if you remember last week's matchup, they battered the Razorbacks at Tuscaloosa. We expect the same from that offense and defensive lines. Look for the veteran offensive line to open up major holes on that Razorback defense, and those trio of backs, Hart, Lacey, and Yelton, should have a field day this coming week against Arkansas. So that's going to be the game plan. Nick Saban and his offensive coordinator Nussmeier love to run first. That opens up the passing game, and if they have success early in this game, McCarron will have a huge day in Little Rock. So keep that in mind going into this matchup. If you're the Razorbacks and head coach John L. Smith, what can we say? But nobody expects you to win this game, so that could be a positive going in. Nobody expects you to win after that letdown last week at home. The wind was let out of the sails, so you might as well throw caution to the wind. Tyler Wilson, as far as what we read and what we can see, he might not play. It's going to be a game time decision whether he plays or redshirt freshman Brandon Allen, who took his spot last week. You're going to need to use Niall Davis in the running game. To date, in victories over Michigan and Western Kentucky, it's impossible to run on that front seven of Alabama. They held Michigan to only 2.4 yards per rush. They held Western Kentucky to only 1.6. Arkansas and Niall Davis is going to have to average at least 3.5 to 4 yards per rush. Can they do it? That's the question mark going into this game, and that'll be the major the major factor if Arkansas is in this game. They need to run the football, because if they are one-dimensional and they're just going to sit back and try to fling the ball all over the place, it's going to cause major problems, because Kirby Smart will just blitz and blitz and blitz, and that front seven is going to put major pressure on either Tyler Wilson or his backup Brandon Allen. We said it before, we'll say it again. John L. Smith is not a good head coach. He's an average coach. We saw his success at Louisville, and then how that carried over into the Big Ten with Michigan State. He did not fare well in the bigger conferences, and in the SEC already, his third game, he's on the hot seat. He didn't expect to be a long-term solution for Arkansas, but many fans thought he could still lead them to 10 victories. That right now is proving to be a major task after an upset to Louisiana Monroe. So how does the Razorbacks respond this week? How do they throw caution to the wind and try and erase that disgrace last week in Little Rock? We'll have to see. We might have a prediction on this game. We're holding back just because of the injury to Wilson. We want to see how it progresses later in the week. So we'll keep an eye out on that. Defensively, for Arkansas, you need to step up your game. You gave up 50 yards plus to Louisiana Monroe. This is the number one ranked team in the country. They hang their hat on the veteran offensive line. They're going to try and break your will early. How does the Arkansas defense respond? Will the fans be behind this team, or is everybody just expecting a loss? That's the major question, and we have to see how the defense responds. Defensively for the Razorbacks, you have to break tendencies. You cannot go into this game what you've done for the last two games. Nick Saban will out-game plan you. You need to break your game plan, and you need to break your tendency in order to have a shot. Whether John L. Smith and his coaching staff is doing that, we'll have to see. But that's the only chance you have to win this game at this point, especially with the injury to Wilson. So stay with us all season long. www.acsportstips.com.